Welcome back. Now, a ceasefire between India and Pakistan appears to be holding after both sides accuse each other, beg your pardon, of initial violations as an uneasy calm has taken hold following days of the worst eruption of fighting between the two nuclear-armed neighbors in decades. But Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says that he's keeping an eye on Pakistan. Joining me now, and of course, he was part of our panel discussion last week, I'd like to welcome Professor Junaid Ahmad, who is the director of the Center for the Study of Islam and Decolonization in Islamabad. Professor, as always, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and Jazakallah so much for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam, Faraz. Always a pleasure to be with you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Professor, Narendra Modi says he's keeping an eye on Pakistan. Is he bluffing, or is it a keen eye on what is going to happen right now, given the events over the past weekend?
Well, I think Narendra Modi has basically kept his eyes on Pakistan from the very beginning of his political career, because I think demagogues like Modi depend on some invented enemy to stay in power. So his eyes have been on Pakistan for a very long time. Yes, it is true that the people of the subcontinent, at least the sane and rational and sensible people, were very excited and happy that a ceasefire was brokered by none other than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
This is the big joke. The ones that he was supposed to broker in Palestine, Israel, and Ukraine and Russia, those haven't worked yet. But the one in India, Pakistan, he's been able to help negotiate. We don't know the details, but as you were saying, they've been still reported some small skirmishes on what's the line of control that divides Indian administered Kashmir and Pakistan administered Kashmir. But that is pretty normal. I mean, in the sense that we often call it a low intensity conflict between India and Pakistan that's basically is ongoing. That there's never a pause of that. The worrying thing, as you mentioned, is Modi's speech right after the ceasefire, in which he says that, look, well, of course he's going to say, look, we defeated the Pakistanis, all of that. That's fine. And there's a ceasefire, but don't mistake this ceasefire as a complete cessation of hostilities. That is to say, think of it more as a pause. And again, Brother Faraz, as we speak about these things, one cannot help but just to have in your image Benjamin Netanyahu basically saying the same thing, right, about these types of things. Yeah.
Professor Ahmad, I had offered him, and he's based in Jerusalem. He works for Boycott from Within. So what he had said was the release of the American-Israeli captive, and I'm sure you've been following that also, Eden Alexander, was a bit of an embarrassment to Benjamin Netanyahu. The fact that Donald Trump brokered this ceasefire deal without really putting Narendra Modi as the front of these negotiations, does this leave Modi with egg on his face? And on the other side, does this strengthen the resolve of Shehbaz Sharif?
Well, I think that this is something that now is truly being discussed in a much more serious way. You know, throughout the whole period of the genocide in Gaza, we often were told that, well, you know, there are some disagreements, some splits between Netanyahu and Biden. It told this every single week. We're fed this. And, you know, for all we know, these just could have been lies. But even if they were true, who cares? The bombs were still being given to the Israelis. Now, in this situation right now, I think it is very clear that obviously Trump is not Biden. Trump is unpredictable. Trump himself is the type of a bully character. Trump does not like to be bullied and controlled by others. And so the excitement that Netanyahu had of his good friend Trump coming to power, I think that's eroding very quickly. And these examples that you're talking about is a good one. I mean, for the American-Israeli hostage to be released, the Americans said, you know, forget about the Israelis. We'll go and talk to Hamas ourselves, get them released. When Netanyahu came to the White House, his last trip, of course, he comes to Washington all the time. And in fact, probably the only country he can now come to since there's an arrest warrant against him. But when he came, there'd be no briefing to him about what was actually going to be said at the press conference. And there, when Netanyahu went on his normal spiel about how Iran can't have nuclear weapons, we have to do something now. Trump says that, yeah, okay, we're going to negotiate. We're going to, negotiate. We want the Iranians to do well. We're going to negotiate with the Iranians. It totally took them by surprise. And I think that Netanyahu is becoming incredibly anxious. Even this trip that Trump is making to the Gulf countries, we still don't see Israel on that itinerary. So there are some factors here that are causing people to think that there is somewhat of a rift in which, not so much that Trump is really going after Netanyahu, but Trump will do what Trump wants to do.
And the same could be said, of course, with Narendra Modi, one would say, because Narendra Modi believes he's still a very good partner with Washington, but this is the same Trump that hit quite a massive hike on for India with regards to the tariffs.
That's right. In fact, it seems like the Chinese are becoming better friends of the Americans than the Indians, because as your audience may be well aware, the tariffs went from 145% to, I don't know, 35 or something. And then both China and U.S. reduced it. So I mean, that was more theater in that sense. But yes, no, I mean, even when Modi came to Washington D.C., it was again quite insulting. I mean, they have this nice press conference and then says, "Well, you guys rip us off, and now we're going to put these tariffs on you."
Yeah.
So it's a very fluid situation. I mean, at the end, we're talking about kind of really like economics, but then there's the geopolitics that come in which the U.S. does rely on India in a very big way as part of its targeting and containment of China. And Pakistan gets in the way of that. Pakistan has a very close relationship with China. And so there's a geopolitical component to it that actually has to be also seen as very important to what's unfolding now.
Professor Ahmad, here's the thing, right? Operation Sindhu was built up as this big PR stunt from the Indian government. We are going to make sure that Pakistan learns this lesson. Heck, they even got Bollywood actors. Some Bollywood actors were going ahead and promoting this Operation Sindhu. And it was hyped up so much that one would think that India were going to walk into certain states of Pakistan, destroy it, and ask for a complete surrender from the Pakistani military and its government. Boy, they were proven wrong, weren't they? Because I watched over the weekend on the various news agencies, Pakistan actually had quite not just the resistance, but the ability to go ahead and attack military bases within India. So that just shows that Narendra Modi isn't as strong, or this Indian army isn't as strong as he portrays it to be through whatever PR debacle that he puts out.
Yeah, look, I don't want to compare the rather, the upper echelons and their corruption of the Pakistani military. Yes. I don't want to compare them to the Palestinian resistance. But yes, it did seem like a situation in which we all know that India has much bigger conventional military force, also in terms of weaponry and jets and so on. But I mean, this was and I'm sure the Chinese are just incredibly ecstatic. These were Chinese planes mainly that the Pakistanis were using, their jets, that shot down at least 6 the Indian Rafale, these French, top-of-the-line jets. So you're absolutely right. They weren't expecting it at all. They thought that after the Indian strikes in 19 different areas deep inside Pakistan, Pakistan would be so intimidated, be begging for a ceasefire, etc. In fact, what is being said is that the opposite happened. So when Pakistan started to strike back at very strategic military installations and bases near the border with India, and get back and so on without there weren't any dogfights even that were happening between the jets. It was at that time people really do think that Modi himself asked the Trump administration to kind of get involved for a ceasefire, because I think that he just was not prepared
Yes.
to go to that extent. I mean, they have never, both countries have not made preparations for a full scale war in that sense. Again, I mean, the whole idea is they have nuclear weapons. They have to be careful with these things. It can only go so far.
Professor Ahmad, always a pleasure having you, and Jazakallah so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much for Assalamu alaikum.
That's Professor Junaid Ahmad, Director of the Center for the Study of Islam and Decolonization, based in Islamabad, Pakistan. After the break, we're going to be chatting to Amin Minty. So currently the West Park Cemetery, which has served the Muslim community for over a decade, is reaching its capacity. We're going to find out what is the way going forward. Do stay tuned for that conversation.